Just 2 minutes silence and then we will start. Om Shanti. The class that we had, the last one, was about the Srishti Chakra, the cycle. So this is the continuation from there. And I also mentioned that these are the questions which will be answered when people say why good things happen to bad people and why bad things happen to good people. And when the deities were so pure and so worship worthy, and they had everything good going on in the beginning of the cycle, why the state of the condition of this world has become like this, and the divine qualities that the deities possessed at that point, how come we do not have it now? I mean, what happened to that time and that kingdom and those souls who lived there? How come it is not the same right now? It is exactly the opposite. The opposite to divine virtues, opposite to what you call as a pure environment, pure elements. So there is no purity here at this point. The sign of impurity is sorrow, and the sign of impurity is instability. Absolutely, something which is pure can stay for a long time, but which is not pure, which is not fresh, it can get spoiled at any time. So we can't predict it. So if you see the world right now, it's in that condition, not very good quality. So what has been the journey is what we will take up today. The whole journey of Bharat. Why especially Bharat, India, is because we need that clarity of what had happened, that, you see the most history that this country has, and at the same time with that understanding that this is the oldest land. And so that's exactly why there should be everything that is, this land should have seen the best of the best, and it will see the worst of the worst. So we have to have the whole history that we need to go through, and the history of the soul. We do know the history of the physical aspects of how someone ruled a kingdom somewhere, and so and so date and so time, and so on and so forth. But what about the soul? When did it actually begin? Now we can say that about let us say in 18th century this kingdom was there, but that was not the beginning of everything. So we have to go to the beginning of the whole cycle. So the clear beginning of this whole cycle of 5,000 years that we discussed last class happens only in India, because the rest of the lands develop later on. So why India? But it has to be somewhere. So it happened to be in India. That's exactly why if you go to the website of Indian website, it is written 5,000 years history. So it has the longest history, and a very praiseworthy history. So I'll start showing you the picture and explaining to you. So here we are. So here we are. So You can see this, I think. Yeah. Yeah. So you can give me that. Okay. So here we are. Now, this is the golden period. This period is called the golden period of the soul. And so when it was a golden period, of course, there was everything. The land was pure. The, you know, what you call as a nature, surrounded by nature, that is, all the 5 elements were pure. So because there's purity, there is absolutely highest discipline of elements, that it will not rain when it has to, it should not rain. And everything in its system, it doesn't cause sorrow. Mainly elements don't cause sorrow. So the soul, because the soul here, if you see, is Sato Pradhan. It's written as Sato Pradhan. Sato Pradhan means pure. In every form, it is truthful, the soul. So that, and the best part here is that the ones who lived here were soul conscious. They were very aware that they are souls. They never forget that they are souls. Now we practice that we are souls. We do practice it, but here they don't have to practice it. They know that they are souls, and they know they're not bodies. So that's exactly why they don't experience death. So the thing is, when you are aware that you are a soul, then the fear of death doesn't happen. You know, because you know, usually what happens for them there is that they will have a vision. And in this vision, they will see that they're going to become, you know, a baby. They'll have a vision of a baby, and they know they're going to be born like a baby now. So, you know, they'll just lie down, and there is a ceremony, and there's a lot of singing and, you know, farewell, and nobody's crying. Nobody cries in Golden Age, the Satya. Nobody cries because there's no sorrow. And so that is how they depart. So that is why this period is called the land of immortality. Even now, the more we practice soul consciousness, the less the fear would be there of death. You know, so in 1,050 years, it's the Sun Dynasty rulers. They were great rulers. There absolutely no complaint from any region when they were ruling, because there was only happiness, there was only good news in the court. There's nothing else. And they had what you call a 16 celestial degrees in all the virtues and qualities. Now, if you see the highest degree, 16. Like if they have patience, 16 degrees, the highest. Like in the moon, it takes 16 bits and pieces to complete itself, like a full moon. So that is why the moon is considered to be, when it's full moon, they say 16 celestial degrees. Padhar Kala Sampurna. Sola Kala Sampurna. This is what they say. So they actually possess all the highest degrees, complete in all virtues. So the description of deities are Sarva Guna Sampanna. They are complete in all virtues. Doubly Ahimsak, they are the ones who are double non-violent. That is, they do not give sorrow through the mind, not through words, not through any other way. You know, so the thing is, even Mansa Vacha Karmana, they don't give. That is through thoughts, words, and actions, they don't give sorrow. How do you give sorrow through thoughts? Not liking someone, wishing bad for them. This is all giving sorrow. And also, there is no, you know, seeing others with a bad drashti, that they don't see each other as bodies, they see each other as souls. So there is no, these two, you know, it's considered as violence. So both type of violence is not there. There's a very pure drishti towards each other. And at the same time, they are considered to be someone who's Maryada Purushottam, they say. Maryada means all the codes of conduct. They're very, very clear in their code of conduct. Extremely mannerful. So very royal. So they are ruling this land. It's a perfection. In other words, it's perfection. So in the beginning of Satyug, the population is about 9 lakh. The end of Satyug, there are 2 crores. So in this span, they have, as I mentioned, they have long lifespan because they're soul conscious. They do not have disease, and they have death according to a lifespan. After the lifespan is finished, they get a vision. So they live up to 150 years. So this whole thing, and they never look old. There are no wrinkles and gray hair and all like how it is there now here. And that is why deities are never shown with gray hair and wrinkles and all that. So the 1,250 years, 1,250 years is total happiness. The Surya Vamshi rulers. Who was ruling in Surya Vamshi? What are the names of those souls who were ruling is what I will mention. So the thing is, if you see the beginning, the first, what you call as the first generation, which was ruled by Lakshmi Narayan. You see the picture here, Lakshmi Narayan. Lakshmi Narayan, in fact, is the name of the post that they take up. Lakshmi Narayan means all the questions I'll take up in the end. I'll give time, and somebody has posed a question, I will answer it then, surely. Let me go through the whole thing. Okay. So Lakshmi Narayan is the name of the position. It is not their name. Whoever takes the throne will be called Lakshmi Narayan. Because Lakshmi Narayan means emperor, empress. So their children will be Lakshmi Narayan 1, they will be Lakshmi Narayan 1, their children Lakshmi Narayan 2, Lakshmi Narayan 3, Lakshmi Narayan 4, and so on, so forth. So there are 8 generations which will rule. This Narayan, when he was young, before he takes the crown, before he gets married and he takes the crown, his name was Krishna. He was a child. And his wife, when she was young, she was called Radhe. So both of them, when they sit on the throne, see, they're called Radhe and Krishna. But when they sit on the throne, the name changes. So we do not know the name of their children who take the throne, the next throne, their son who takes the throne. We do not know their name when they were young. Only the first one who sat on the throne, we know their names. So they rule about 8 generations. Because it is the beginning is of the Krishna who sits on the throne, Narayan. So 8 generations. So it's called Krishnashtami. So he takes 8 generations. His generations rule. That is Sun dynasty. So this is the beginning. Then the second part, if you see, from Sato Pradhan, it comes to Sato Guni. The soul becomes Sato Guni. Guni means the qualities of truth are there. The qualities are still there. There's happiness still there. The elements are disciplined. Everything around is the same way as it is here. But here they are 16 degrees. They come to 14. 2 degrees less. It comes down. Because as the time passes by, the strength gradually diminishes. So the difference is not there in the quality of thoughts and quality of interactions, quality of life. That has not changed. It is the same, but then the purity level has come down. So because the purity has come down, from say 16, it comes to 14, and the births, they take about 8 births. They take 12 here in the same period of time of 1,250 years. Because when the purity comes down, the more the purity, the more you're able to sustain the body with no pain. But when they come here, the lifespan decreases to maybe 120 and odd. So then what happens? They take about 12 births in the same amount of time. But the rulers are different. It transforms from Sun dynasty rulers to Moon dynasty rulers. Surya Vamshi to Chandra Vamshi rulers. So when Chandra Vamshi rulers begin, their generations, that is the first one who takes over is Rama, Sita generations, and their children will be Rama, Sita 2, Rama, Sita 3, Rama, Sita 4. So they'll be Rama, Sita 12. So there are 12 generations which will rule in this kingdom. Absolutely no war, no obstacles, no jealousies, nothing. I mean, you just rule it, that's it. Everybody is happy. Everybody is happy. Mm. So the thing is, because from the ninth generation, because till the eighth generation, it is Satyug and Lakshmi Narayan, their generations ruling. So once they come here to the ninth generations, it is Rama Sita, the what you call as Treta. From this Treta Yuga, it is the moon dynasty. That is why it is called Rama Navami. From the ninth generation it will begin. Ninth generation, it will start. That is why it's called Ramachandra, because the one who belongs to the moon dynasty is called Surya Narayana, the one who belongs to the sun dynasty. So if you see here, 2,500 years of heaven. This is called heaven because there is happiness, and heaven is not somewhere up there. It was very much here. They were ruling. These were our ancestors. So, by the end of this, what you call as a silver period or Treta Yuga, by the end of it, there are about 33 crore Devi Devata. That is the population all put together. They say 33 crore. It's written in scriptures. 33 crore Devi Devata, 33 kotla Deva Devatalu. So the thing is, they are all the ones who lived here. Not just the rulers, but also the praja, everybody together, the subjects, everybody together is 33 crores because they all share the same divine virtues. So the kind of actions they perform here, karma, they say the effect of karma is, if you see, it is called neutral actions here. Neutral actions means it's the whole philosophy of you do something, you get something from it, doesn't work here. It's null. It doesn't work here. Only akarma works. Akarma is that whatever they are here is a result of some actions they performed in the past, before this. That is why they've gone here. So they're experiencing heaven. They say, no, if you do good actions, you'll go to heaven, they say. No? So they've done something, that's why they're there. So they're not going to make any more effort. They only experience the fruition of their actions. And that is why akarma means there is money earned and it's in the bank, it's in fixed deposits, and you're just eating interest, just sitting back and eating interest because you've earned enough, you've saved enough, you just don't have to worry anymore. That is how it is. So whatever actions they perform, there is no choice. When you have choice, then you get marks, isn't it? They have something called choose the correct word. So you have 4 things, and because you know what is the right thing, you're able to choose from all the wrong. But here there's no choice. There's no choice of bad and good, that they choose the good so they get some marks and they get some return from that. No, they only know what is good and everybody is good. So what would you get from it? Nothing really. So it is called karma. This is neutral actions. So after this period, if you see, you come into the Kapha period. I'll just show it because it's a huge picture. Okay, here we are. You will hold it, Ravina? Okay, thank you. So if you see here, yeah, that's about it. If you see here, the soul here is Raju Pradhan. It was Sato Guni, the soul's the quality of the soul. Here it becomes Rajo Pradhan, semi-pure. The amount of purity which is there, it's not there. The amount of purity in Kali Yuga which is there, it's not that, like that also. No extremity. Right in between. And this particular line, when it begins, that is the Kapha period. So 50% purity, 50% impurity. And so there will be introduction of sorrow, because there's introduction of vices here, because they become body conscious. Here they're completely soul conscious. So when they descend into Kapha period, body consciousness begins. And when they become body conscious, then what is a sign of body consciousness? The very first result of body consciousness is that the 5 vices come into the picture. Anger, ego, lust, attachment, greed. These are the 5 main vices. That it's not in a very prominently, like it is not taking over like how it is now, but it begins here. They start comparing each other's bodies, each other's possessions, and wars begin slowly later on. And because of sorrow, they start calling out to God. Here there is, here in these two periods, there's no calling out for God because there is no sorrow at all. Absolutely no sorrow. So there's no calling out. There's a very famous Kabir Doha, the poem written by Kabir. They say, दुख में सिमरन सब करे, सुख में करे न कोई, जो सुख में जो सिमरन करे, उनको दुख काहे को है. Means everybody remembers God when there is sorrow. Nobody remembers God in happiness. If you were to remember God in happiness, why would you have sorrow? It's like that. So when they were in happiness, absolutely there is no calling out to God. There is nothing aspect of religion there at all. So when they come here, the first person who builds a temple for God and seeks for his blessings is Vikramaditya. If you see here, first Shivling he makes, and he makes Somnath Mandir. The temple of Somnath in Gujarat. He's the first one to make the temple. And if you see in the Copper Age, there are about from 14 colors, 14 celestial degrees, it comes to 8 now. It has descended. Because of body consciousness and everything, it comes to 8 colors. There is only 8 degrees of some aspects in some qualities of some perfection. And here in 1050 years, this copper period or Dwapar Yuga is also of 1050 years. And in this period also, they take about 21 births. Because the reasons for death has increased. Here it's only old age, both the places, only old age. But here disease, war, reasons have increased. So then the lifespan also decreases. So that's exactly why they take about 21 births in 1050 years. That's a lifespan. So at this period of time when Bhakti began, they were quite scholarly souls who lived there. Scholarly in the sense they were very wise, and they were great poets. They were souls who had a lot of art, the very highest form of art in everything, in maybe paintings or singing, or every art was well developed and it was very creative. So at that point of time, it is spoken that they would ask these great scholars and poets to write something for the future, because they know what has been their past and they know they're not the way that they were before. They knew their ancestors very well. Like how for us Gandhiji is a recent reality, even though we've never seen him, we've never met him, but we've heard all his stories and it's reality, it's true. Now you would not say it's a fable story about Gandhiji. No, every child will tell the story of Gandhiji, the salt satyagraha, and how he is gone in Africa, and they pushed him out of the train. So all these stories are so embedded in us. We grow up hearing these stories about Gandhiji, and we know he existed, and we know that is reality. In the same way, here they keep hearing stories about how they ruled. From childhood they hear that how the ancestors were, how Lakshmi Narayan kingdom was there, how this Rama Sita ruled. So they keep, they're very well informed about their ancestors, and they keep describing and all that. But now the deities are like some stories now for us. Like Gandhiji is a reality, but Vikramaditya is a story. He was a king. He ruled, really he ruled. But for us, he's just what you call as a story. There are a lot of stories of Vikram and Betal, and he went to the jungle with a ghost on his on his shoulder, and what not stories they make. But he really existed. Betal's story would not have happened ever, but he was there. In the same way for us, the deities have become stories. The very, very symbolically, very well-written stories are there, and some which is misinterpreted and written by human beings according to the whims and fancies. So all varieties are there. So we have to know the real story so that we can relate, we can somehow, we'll be able to relate to the right kind of stories then. Who were they really? Who were the deities really? So we cannot insult our own ancestors. We should know truly how they were. So if you see here, This is the first time they have asked the scholars and the creative people here to write for the future. And that is when scriptures came into being. When they started writing, there was a lot of logic and understanding and clarity with which they would write. And they would write and they present it in front of the king and all different scholars. And they have to approve it to be given to the public. So it seems at that time what was written, the kings would reject it and the scholars would reject it. And they would say, if you've written, do good, you will get good. You should always do good. You know, something like that. If you've written, they would say people in the coming years would not like to listen to all this knowledge. Probably they would not, want to be told what to do and what not to do. So how about writing it in a story format so that people can conclude that this is how we need to become. Like you want to teach a child, you tell a story to the child, Ram was a good boy and so everybody liked him. So if you want to be liked, you should be a good boy, something like that. So similarly, you should be able to write stories that will be interesting for them to listen, because stories are always interesting. So that is when the concept of writing a story with a spiritual meaning in it, or with some sort of philosophical meaning in it, so that people would enjoy and at the same time bring that into life. That was the reason where the scriptures started. And most of our scriptures, if you see, are all stories. Most of them, not Vedas and all, but Mahabharatas and Bhagavat and, Ramayana, all are stories. The main scriptures are all stories. So, and from there comes Gita, actually, some knowledge. Bhagavat is all about, playful stories. They're not really anything much. Bhagavat is about Krishna's Leela, something like that. So anyway, so if you see, then they wrote these stories with very significant meaning, very, very significant meanings with it. Let us take the story of Rama and Sita. What we have understood all our lives is that, Sita went into the jungle along with Rama, and there was a deer, and then there was a lion drawn, and then she stepped out, Ravan took her. So the thing is, the whole story, logically, if you want to see it, you would find everything so wrong in every level. For some person who is so divine and so with such wisdom and everything can do such a thing, how could anybody do such things? You would see what I've explained here about Treta Yuga and all the Ramas ruling. None of the Ramas went to the jungle because there were no jungles there. There were no jungles. There's nothing to cause sorrow there. So none of them, even the last Rama was almost like a human being. He also never went into a jungle. So which Rama went into the jungle actually, so if you ask? Nobody went. But the thing is, when they wrote these stories, they wanted a brand ambassador. People would want to know, like, oh, Abdul Kalam used to do that. Oh, Gandhiji used to do that. Gandhiji said this sentence. You keep seeing Facebook, Gandhiji's words and this and that. Half of them, I'm sure Gandhiji never said that, and half of them, Abdul Kalamji would have never said that. But when you put their name, there is some sort of a value to it. People would like to read, oh, it's Dr. Abdul Kalam said this, I want to listen, So that is why they put their name. Like, they're advertising something, let us say a Lux soap, they will say Aishwarya Rai used it. Now, she might have never used that Lux sabun, never used that particular soap, but they put her name. Yeah. And people think, oh, she is so pretty, so she's used Lux sabun, let me buy it. So people buy it. Same way, when they wrote the stories here, they started writing with that understanding that people will understand if we put their names in it, because they were the ones who were the most famous. There were no movies then. Their ancestors were the hero and heroines for them at that time. So when they wrote the story that the Sita was there and the line was drawn by Lakshmana, which means to say, in our life, the real meaning of the story, I'm telling you, the real meaning is that the line is drawn for all of us, not just for Sita, but all of us. There are a lot of attractions out there. There are a lot of things which seems that we deserve it and we want it. But there is a code of conduct. The line is drawn. You can't go out there and do, without having that line. You should, whatever you do, you have to do within that line. You can't step out of it. If you step out of it, it becomes vikarma. Vikarma means negative action. And when you perform negative action, you have to experience its repercussions. You have to experience the result 100%. So they say, don't step out of that line. Stay within that line. Let us say you have a thought. You get so angry, you get a thought. I want to slap this person, the way he's behaving. It is said through that line they're talking, they say that if you get a thought, no problem, keep it in your mind, because there is a scope for it to change. It can change. You would not feel it is really right to slap somebody. The thought might change. It will also change. It will change. But if you step out of that line and you put it into action, you really slap the person, you come into a cycle of action and reaction then. Someone has to come and slap you sometime in the future, if not now. Maybe with no rhyme reason, somebody will come. You have to experience it. So they say don't bring it to action, because one thing is you have to experience its result. Another thing is that once you put into action, it just so happens that it becomes easy for you to do the next time. You don't have to take so much thought. You'll just do it. And it's also in that story, very clearly they show that we have deceptive thoughts that we believe. Why do we put into action? If we really have knowledge and understanding, we know getting angry is wrong, doing this is wrong. But at the same time, at that particular time, some thoughts come that we think it's all right to get angry. So they very clearly in the story speak about the deceptive thoughts that deceive us. That she thought that the person standing outside that line was a beggar and not Ravan. Who is Ravan? Very clearly they show him with 10 heads. 10 heads means 5 vices of man and 5 vices of woman. That is why they say Dasera, Dashara. That is, you cut these 10 heads. Only then they will be Deepavali. That is, every house there is deep ignited, that the soul gets ignited only after you kill the 5 vices. Ravan is a symbolic representation of vices. Such a person never existed. It's so difficult for someone to walk with 10 heads. He never existed. He will never exist. It's a concept, very beautifully, very symbolically represented truth. They say Ravan had fire and wind gods in his hand. So they have written there, in this period, they have predicted, because they are semi-pure, they could even predict what's going to happen in the future. They said Ravan will have the wind god and the fire gods in his hands. That is, he will have the power of electricity, the power of science, mainly power of science in his hand. Electricity, one remote, and that AC is on, one remote, the light is on. So they'll all have this power in their hands, Ravan. Who's Ravan? Anyone with these 5 vices is Ravan, male or female. So we are all Ravans. Sounds very bad, no? That's true. Because we have these 5 vices. They say in their kingdom, everything is there. Ravan's kingdom, everything is there. Splendor, luxury, everything, but there's no character. There's no character too. People have everything going, but it's very doubtful whether they have character. It's very easy to leave character. It's getting worse now. In center, it just so happens that we get to know and meet so many families and everything. They're wonderful people. They're doing very well. Academically also, they must have done very well and gone to the topmost institutions to study, and they must be earning very well and everything. But the sad part is character. The drop of the hat, they can just go and do something very, very wrong. And it's very obvious, and they can't help it. Probably they feel, little lightened by it, by coming and confessing or telling what they're doing. But the weight of that action will always remain. It becomes a burden. It's always that karma doesn't go anywhere. It's there. What kind of actions you do to earn money, what kind of actions you do to sustain your relationships with your spouse and children, everything, it has an impact in your future. So the thing is, karma is working it works in a bad way if you do bad things. But that's why they show Sita stepped out of that code of conduct. That keep it in your mind, don't bring it into action, but she brought it into action. She mistook Ravan to be a beggar. Like some people would say, for example, they would say, she's younger than I. How can she say that to me? So I slapped. Even as a child, even if it is adult, a child, whoever it is, anger is anger. It is Ravan only. It's not a beggar, it's Ravan. She thought she's doing something good. People can go out of their way trying to help others, and they want to do a lot for others, and they get attached to them. I know so many families. They think something they're doing, something great, and they get attached, and both the spouses it's a hard time for them because they can't do without each other. I remember a couple, such a wonderful boy. He's a wonderful boy. Yeah, nowadays, I don't think so anybody will put up with such wives. She got attached to somebody in America, her school friend, and she wants to go and meet him, and she's crying, get me a ticket, and take me there, or I want to go, no, I want to meet him. Without meeting him, I don't think so we can do anything in this marriage. He bought her a ticket, and he explained to that man that this is not right what you're doing. And every night they're talking. But he saw that, that she would like to go and meet, and I refused. I said, not one paisa you're going to give to go and meet. Why you're encouraging this nonsense? He said, I can't take this anymore. So there is no character now. Absolutely no character. So that is a sign. That is what they said. It's about, Ravan coming and making Sita step out. So who are we all? We are all Sitas, and we are all Ravans. Why Ravan they show? How they show Ravan with two horns and teeth jutting out? So it means, who's Asura actually? Who's Asur? The human being, any human being who has traits of an animal is an Asura. There's no other category of people in Patal or somewhere like they're called, devils or demons or Asuras. Asura Samharini means to kill the demon inside of us. That is why it's called the Great War, and it's a real war. It should take about a second to kill someone out there, but it's a long time to kill what is within us. So when the scriptures were written, they said, now beautiful written stories. They were explaining. They would sing it, like how we have at that point of time, the mode of entertainment was not like now. We don't have movies and TV like that. They didn't have them. So it was only these people who would go and interpret the stories and tell people. It's like we have something called Harikatha and all that, no? Something like that would go on like this in a much more sophisticated way. They would sing and explain these stories. But now the ones who would explain, the ones who've written are not there now. And these scriptures have been so misinterpreted and multi-editions, which have absolutely no meaning, has been added. And when they wrote the scriptures, they have recommended the deities' names to be inserted in it because they were so famous. Like how say Aishwarya is famous and she used the Lux. So in the same way, they wanted to introduce the deities in those scriptures. They never went through all of that which is written in the scriptures, nothing like that. They were ruling the land in perfection. That's why they praised, not because they went to jungle, not because she went into the earth, Sita went into the earth, not because Rama suspected her. These are all human feelings they have, attached to them, and which is not at all what happened. And Krishna stole all the, how terrible, however great you are, you don't go stealing in homes and flirting with girls and stealing their clothes. These are all not something. If someone does that and say, I'm like Krishna, then slap them and put them in jail. No, nobody really. These are all human entertainment. It became an entertainment after a while. So much of entertainment that they're adding, no, he stole these things. It was something just to make everyone happy in the divine way. But it's insulting the person, no, who's ruling, who's the first prince of the golden age, and he was such a respectful soul. You are disrespecting them. People make a lot of fun of this. That Krishna had so many girlfriends, why not me? Something like that. People get this reasoning because there's no reason and meaning in those stories. But when the first Gita was written, it was written Bhagavan Avaj, there was no name in it. Only the versions of God, that's it. If you were to go back here, probably all the scriptures will be interpreted properly for you and you could listen, but we are not here. And the ones who lived and wrote it, they're not here right now. So, but the thing is, because of the scriptures, the worship of the deities began then. It was only worship of Shivaling before, God being incorporeal and no other form. Then later the worship of the deities began because of these scriptures. And when they were worshipping the deities, they knew they were their ancestors. They knew they were not God. And they have to become like them. There was a lot of clarity when they worshipped at this time. But later when they entered Kali Yuga, the meaning was lost, totally lost. Totally misinterpreted. Yeah. So I'll tell you about Kali Yuga, the last part of the cycle. We need to raise it a little bit, it looks like. If you see here, I just have to show the soul here. I'll put it here. So if you see here, yeah, be careful. Huh? Can you hold it? Okay. So if you see here, the soul here is what you call is Tamo Pradhan. No colors left. No purity. In any quality, there's no, if you have patience, not much at all. It's never consistent. Nothing is consistent. So you can understand the sign of impurity is Tamopradhan. So the soul here is being Tamopradhan. So there are about no colors left here in this Kali Yuga. No color. None, zero. And there are about 42 births. That's a long, so many, not long, many births, huh? In the same span of 1,050 years. The soul has become so impure that there is, in everything, the Andhashraddha increases a lot from here. Andhashraddha is blind faith, increases. Whatever you show, it's God. You show a stone, you show anything, it's God. Because the sorrow is increased, fear is increased, desires have increased. So the more the increase of all these three, the more the different methods, there will be a lot of people, a lot of ashrams and a lot of mutts and everything will open. None of them connect you to God. They either connect others to their knowledge or to their guru, but never to God. That is Viyog, that is disconnected with our God. And they can call themselves as God. So they will be doing bhakti, a lot of bhakti, puja, part and everything, whatever is there, dan, punya, whatever, but these actions are still increasing. Because there is no strength in bhakti, because there is no meaning in it. Without any meaning, that they can take Ganesha and worship it and throw it into the water. It's what's a money waste. No, God will never inspire such actions that you drink and you dance and you take Ganesha and throw it into the water. I don't think God would encourage such actions, which is inconvenient for everyone. And so the thing is, they will worship and everything and throw it into water. This never happened here. It happens only in Kali Yuga. Because that kind of directions have not been there before. So even though bhakti, how much ever you do, character is not changing. I've met people who do so much bhakti, I can't tell you. They wake up in the 5 in the morning and they'll do bhakti and all that, but character nil. Absolutely nil. You can't blame because they're part of Kali Yuga. It's like that. So Bharat, which was in the beginning in the Kappa period, it was selling diamonds on the road like brinjals. Here it is like in a deathbed on the bed of thorns. Bharat is lying down like a beggar and taking alms and taking loans from World Bank and everything. It doesn't have. It is the richest land. Vasco da Gama, Columbus, Captain Cook, they were all searching for this land because it was the golden sparrow. It's the richest land on this earth. Because a land which passed by was Swarga, no? Heaven. So naturally it's the richest land. They were searching. Columbus went to America in search, and Vasco da Gama somehow ended up here. Captain Cook ended up in New Zealand. But they were all searching for this country. It was richest. So, and at that time, no other land was developed at all in the beginning, golden and silver. That was only world. That was considered the world. The whole world population was 9 lakhs, 2 crores, 33 crores. That's all. No other part. Copper Age onwards, little bit of land here, there. But the recent, from Kali Yuga onwards, there is America 500 years ago. So the thing is, if you see, this when Kali Yuga began, this is when, if you see, the animal gods are being worshipped, because animal gods are never worshipped from Copper period. From the beginning of Copper period, never. It was never worshipped. But here they started worshipping animal gods. I'll explain to you what these two concepts are. First time in the beginning of Kali Yuga, people still had some sort of a pure consciousness, still little bit. They introduced the concept of symbolic understanding of images. How they have symbolic stories, they started making images because people were only being able to relate to images rather than knowledge anymore. So they had to make an image. So they make an image of Hanuman and Ganesh. They never existed in Satyug. Such kind of animal gods never existed. But there's a meaning behind these images. They're just not made just like that. But again, why I'm telling you this, because I will explain both these images to you, because again, so much insult is there of these images. You can see Ganesha, they'll put cricket dress, and then during Ganesha, that thing, no, they'll make this, what do you call it, mandaps, different mandaps they'll read. And once I was passing by and I saw cricket, it was World Cup going on, and they made cricket dress, a blue dress, to Ganesha and make him stand there. So it's all doesn't make sense. What does Ganesha represent? What does it represent? He never existed. Such a person never existed. And the story of a father cutting, which father cut somebody's head like that? Anybody's head for that, such violent act. And then how does the mother come and do plastic surgery? And with a different head of an elephant, why not a human being? Doesn't make any sense at all. It is just stories. Just stories. There's no meaning. At least the ones which are written in the Copper Age had meaning. In these stories, there is no meaning. But that image has a meaning. They show that a huge stomach. And what do they say? Why do they say he has a huge stomach? They say because he ate a lot of laddus. Who is worshipped for eating laddus, you tell me? I like laddus, you like laddus. Anybody will come and worship us? He's not worshipped for having great digestion power. No. He has, the stomach represents symbolically that he had what you call as a great accommodation power, the power to accommodate. And in those 8 powers that you heard, one of those powers was power to accommodate. That is when insults were thrown at him, he took it like sweets. That's what they say. Undralu in Telugu, they say undralu. They make sweet on that Ganesh day. They make this undralu, and and they eat it. The sweet, there's some nice filling inside, and they eat. Which means to say, when stones, Ralu means stones. When stones were thrown at him, he ate them like sweets. He accepted it. He didn't react. He said, it's okay, no problem. That is the power of accommodation. They show in that huge stomach. He has so much power to forgive and forget. Such a huge stomach. No. That is why he's worshipped. So that means there's nobody like that. It's a concept. If you have the power to accommodate, you're able to let go. People will praise you. If not now, tomorrow, they will. 100%. That's what is one of the reasons they show that huge stomach. Then they show elephant head. It is not like somebody cut it and somebody put it and all. That didn't happen. That never happened. And the meaning of that head is something very beautiful. They say elephants remember and they never forget. If they go in the huge jungle, the whole forest, they will move around very, very comfortably in any area, everywhere. They will never forget the path. Never. That is what their memory is much more higher than a human being, actually. That is why they show him with an, elephant head, because his memory, that is why you've never shown a Ganesha without a swastika. They always show swastika with Ganesh, because his memory goes back till the golden age. His whole cycle is there in his memory. That knowledge he has. The knowledge of the soul is there in his intellect always. Not our history, geography books that we usually keep in front and put haldi and everything, and we put in front of on Ganesh Day. That is not the knowledge he has. He has a knowledge of the whole cycle. They show a rat under his foot. That they say that rat is his vahan, that is his vehicle. That is his vehicle. Yeah, you can put it down till I explain. Both Hanuman and both I'll explain, and then you can't hold for so long. So rat. So this rat is his vahan. Now, practically, if you see, how can someone sit on a rat? Like Ganesha, such a huge image, will sit on a rat? It will die. It cannot live. It will die. So it's not practically that he goes and sits on that vehicle. What it means is that it's under his control. A vehicle is always under our control. When we want to start, only then it will start. So they try to show it that the rat is his vahan, that it is his chariot, his vehicle, because it is under his control. When a rat comes into our life, that it comes into our homes, it eats of paper or bites into our clothes, and we won't even know. We've never catch them in that act. So it works so sleathily, so secretly, that we never know. In the same way, when a weakness comes into our life, we don't even know it's wrong. We don't even realize it's wrong. 100 people around us will be telling, no, don't do this, don't do this. It's very dangerous. It has bad repercussions. No means no, I'll just do it. There's nothing wrong in it. It seems he had complete control of his weaknesses, because the rat is just there and it will not move anywhere else apart from where he's sitting. There was this boy, his mother called me, his father also spoke to me, mother called and said, he's about 23, 24, and he's not listening at home, and, don't know what his life is, and he has to settle down, do something in his life and all. So we have a conversation, and the mother mentioned that the main reason for he was such a bright boy, he's doing very well in everything, and it's all because of this one lady that he befriended, and he met in one of those what are those Ambi products or something like that, like Ambiway or some products. So he met her, and then she keeps calling him to her house. She's married, has 2 children. She's about 36 years of age, and her husband travels a lot. He's in merchant navy. So he goes to help her, get vegetables, get her bank work done, all this, drop her some places where she wants to go. He's doing all that. So don't know when, but he got very attached to her, and it seems he had conversation with her, and she's ready to divorce her husband and marry this 24-year-old unemployed boy. Hmm? And she wants to make him the father for her children. It is such a shocking thing. Hmm. And he's, so blind in his, what you call so-called love, whatever it is. So mother said, you have to talk to him because this lady, she said in Telugu, she's a buttale eskundi, means it's like deceived him, like, I said, okay, let me talk. So when he came, he is so not ready to listen. He said, in Telugu, Amma mimmalni brainwash chesindi. Like, mother has brainwashed you. So you will not understand whatever I say now. This lady is a wonderful lady. I would want her to become the mother of my children because the way she takes care of the children so well and all that. I said, every mother takes care of the children very well. They won't allow stranger boys to come into the house and see how they are. Na? Why she's allowing you into her house? That's not right. She said, no, no, no. This is the way this is. Anyway, he went. And then 3 years later, he comes and he's saying, Didi, you should have told me, you should have stopped me. I said, what do you mean? So many times I told you, never came. No, the thing is that lady turned out to be such a bad person. And he slapped her in open jeep. In there near Paradise, that road is for Paradise, there. So many eyewitnesses, a non-bailable warrant on him. And he's going here, there, hiding himself and all, and he's so upset. He can't even go to job now because the police are in his house coming all the time to arrest him. Repercussions are very bad. If not now, tomorrow. It's never good. So have control. The rat, total control he had. He can't go anywhere. That is the praise of Ganesha. If you want to overcome obstacles, have control over your weaknesses. Have the highest memory of where did we come from. And have the power to accommodate. It's okay, whatever people say, we know who we are. Then you can overcome any obstacle. That's what is this formula for success. So such a Ganesha is not existent anywhere that you have to dip him in the water. You have to throw the obstacles into water, not Vigneshwar into water. Vignesh to throw into water. The symbolic it is. That's what we have to become. It's just not, thinking Ganesha is there. Who's Ganesha? You are Ganesha. When you have these qualities, you are that. This is a formula for success they're talking about. And then second is Hanuman. So they show Hanuman flying. It's possible a monkey flying. And Hanuman is the one they show that he made impossible possible, that they made a bridge between India and Sri Lanka. It's written in the scriptures, your mind is like a monkey because it doesn't stay in one place. If 1 second it is here, tuck, it will go somewhere else, somewhere in the past, somewhere in the future. It keeps jumping here and there. So when you take one good thought, if one thought is fearful, the rest of the thoughts are all fearful. So if the first thought is powerful, the rest of the thoughts are powerful. Thousands and thousands of thoughts are powerful. So the very first thought you take, no, nothing will happen, everything will be fine. All the thoughts are, yes, everything is fine, everything is fine. Thousands and thousands of thoughts, everything is fine. So the worship of the first thought is a worshipping Hanuman. Worshipping Hanuman is worshipping one powerful thought. Because when he said, I can do, the whole Vanar Sena followed. That is the army of monkeys, means the army of thoughts followed him. This is what is the meaning. Or else they'll take real monkeys and they'll be worshipping those monkeys also. They'll do what not, they'll be all Andhashraddha. This is all blind faith. When we want to remember God, we have to take thoughts only and let it go to God. No, we can't go physically there. So when we show the thoughts going there, they show Hanuman flying towards the light. Means we are taking our thoughts across to God. So Hanuman is just a concept. It doesn't really exist. So that is where for courage we say Hanuman Chalisa, because it's powerful thought that you need to take, that nothing will happen. So these are the concepts that they have shown, which don't really exist, but there's a beautiful symbolic meaning behind it. And when you apply it in your life, you experience success. Then finally in Kali Yuga, if you see, the whole Kali Yuga has come to such a bad end now. It's fully, there will be three ways. There will be communal rights, there will be natural calamities, and bombs. All these three ways that the whole cleansing will take place. So this is the end, when the cycle has to again begin from the beginning. We're in the confluence age, where we connect to God. Where we connect to God and we get the strength to perform sukarma. Sukarma is positive actions. We need a lot of strength to perform positive actions, and that is by connecting to God. And this is the confluence age, the end of Kali Yuga. Yes. Now I explain to you. Every action that the whole descent of Bharat from where it was Sato Pradhan to Tamo Pradhan is because of our own actions. Yeah. Maybe the foundation has been body consciousness, but the happiness was soul consciousness in Satyug and Treta. Karma is accurate. I mean, you don't even have to question it. When people say why bad things happen to good people and why good things happen to bad people, there is no good and bad, because we don't know anybody's history. We really don't know. Sometimes, people, they're so good, and when you come to know what they're doing in their homes, it's so shocking. You just can't imagine someone like that can do such a thing. So respectful people can do such a thing. How they speak to their spouse or they speak to their family members is very different from how they are out there. So we don't know anybody's history. We really don't. Like if you were watching a 5-year-old serial, the last episode, and I come to your house and you say, sister, this is our last episode going on, please sister, let us watch this and then we will interact with you. And I sit there patiently waiting for you to finish seeing that serial, let us say. And then in that I can't help watch you all cry when they are laughing in the TV, the actors. And when they're crying, you are laughing. So I really don't understand what is the whole deal is. So I'll ask you after that, why are you crying when they are laughing? And why are you laughing when they are crying? You'll say, sister, this is a 5-year-old serial. Last episode, what will you understand, sister? How can we explain a huge story, big story, and we've been following it for 5 years? Isn't it? So we don't know anybody's history, what lives and which births and where they were for 5, like not just 5 years, but the whole journey that they've gone through, births and deaths. We don't know anything. We really don't know. If a man is hitting a woman, we curse that man and think, how can he beat that woman, his wife, and he has no respect for women, whatever, we keep saying such a bad person. Now they have what you call as a karmic account now. Once you have such kind of negative reaction, it becomes a karmic account with that person. So they're born again, but the male member becomes the female member becomes the male. And now the man is hitting the woman again. Because he's returning back what she got in the last birth. Now again, we will say what a terrible man he is. We don't know their account. We really don't know. Nobody gets any sort of a bad treatment unless they have not given a bad treatment to someone sometime back. Some say, sister, if we do something in this birth, it's good. No, then we will know what we did wrong. Some birth we have done and we are suffering now. What does it? How is it good? There's a lot of people say we should only suffer what we did this birth only. I have a classic example and I'll put it across. I had a friend in college and she specifically liked one boy, a Punjabi boy, very bright future he had, and he was preparing for his IAS and all that. So, and so she said she liked him, and she practically they started going around together, and the parents approved of the relationship also. And after 3 years studying, she went to Delhi to do some course there. It must have been 4 years since they were together. And she comes down to Hyderabad once on vacation, and she tells me that she's breaking up with him. And she didn't give any um, what you call a genuine reason, like why she wants to be. She's talked about long distance, and the thing is, she's not going to be there forever. Her parents are here. I don't know what she's planning to do. All said and done, that boy's a very sensitive boy, and he was so attached and planned everything with her, and he was like shattered. And he became suicidal. He attempted suicide also. I don't know what way she went and tried to cut off, because he was in a shock, because if it comes gradually, then she's ignoring him, and slowly they can understand. It was very abruptly she stopped with him, very terrible way she did. And he suffered for 2 years, and he got into railways actually, and he wrote again because he wants to get into IAS or something like that. IPS, I think. His father was also he was superintendent of police, so he wanted to get into IPS. So what happened was he didn't write again, and he didn't join railways also. Surprisingly, he left for Australia. I mean, he just didn't want to be here. I think he was hospitalized, for about for some surgery and everything, and it deteriorated, completely deterioration, and he had medicine for depression, and he could not. So they sent him off to Australia to his sister's house, I think, and he stayed there for a while. He studied. He started working there. Now he's married with children. He's there in my Facebook, but we're not so much in touch or anything. He suffered 2 years, and parents cursed that girl like anything. Of course, he should be more stronger. He should not let it disturb him. All that we can say, but she became a cause, for all that pain. Anyway, she's come back now. She found some boy there, and it didn't work out, so she's here now. She's married and all. They have this small scale industry. What you call Deepshika, one exhibition type. I met her there. She has put up one of her stalls, and she has some sort of embroidery work. And I'm talking to her, and she's saying, Radhika, why does things happen like that to me? So much sorrow with my in-laws, with my parents, with my children, and everything. She has so many issues, and with her health. And she's saying, I've not given any sorrow to anyone. You know me, no. I've never given sorrow to anybody. Why this is happening to me, she's telling me. Everyone who knows her knows that she has caused so much sorrow to that boy. She didn't break up neatly and find nice way. And that is how our thought process is. We are giving left, right, center sorrow to others, and we're not even aware. We're not even aware. So what's the point of knowing what we did this birth when we don't even realize it's wrong? It doesn't matter which birth when. Whatever karma we do, negative action we do, there are ways that we have to finish it. One is through bodily disease. We finish through disease. One is through relationship problems. The third one is through, trauma, some sort of a mental trauma, situations, all that. And fourth is what we call as untimely death. Untimely death is through suicide, murder, or accident. What is timely death is through disease. These are the 4 ways that we face repercussions of our negative actions. That is, any actions which is done in the what you call as influence of the 5 vices. So the soul suffers. So any karma which you are consciously aware that you're wrong, automatically you experience its results. Now, let us say a child is playing with fire and throws it to the jungle, and the whole jungle catches fire and all the animals die. The child has no karmic account of that. There is no burden of that because the child is not aware. He doesn't know. But if a person, even though he doesn't want to burn the jungle, but he's smoking, he knows this is all dry leaves there. He smokes and he throws it, and it catches fire. He is responsible. Just like how in the court of law, there are certain, degrees of which they will get punishment. Is it premeditated? That did you plan to cause this sorrow, or to kill, or to do something? Did you plan it before? Then the stakes are high. That is, your punishment is higher, because that is a very evil thing to plan to give someone sorrow like that, right? Second is, little lesser degrees, that I never had a intention to kill, but that anger moment, I just attacked, and I unintentionally he died, or he got hurt. Lesser punishment. I did not even get angry, nothing. I just accidentally did that, and there's no intention here, so hardly any punishment. He came and attacked, and I had self-defense, and I tried to stop him, so I attacked. Yes. So there are levels. Same way here. Every action and its repercussion is on the basis of your intention. How much you're informed about how bad it is. Do you know that it is bad? Yes, I know. But yet you did it, then there is punishment. The more the information, the more responsible you become. The more the adult you are, the more the knowledge you have, the more the responsibility. So accordingly, that grade in which you experience its repercussions or its results in our life, good or bad. There was this Krishna Iyer was a judge, and he was in Cochin. He retired in Cochin, and he shared that once he gave a sentence to somebody for a murder case as guilty, and he was given life sentence. But in his heart, the Krishna Iyer was feeling that it's not true. I mean, I don't think so, he must have done it. But all the evidence was against him. So he had to give the sentence like that. But he called him into his chambers after the sentencing. And he asked him, if you feel you have not done anything right now, have you done anything in this life? Because you're 40 now, before you're 40, you did something that you feel guilty about. You think you're going to jail because of that particular thing. If not this, think about something. So he said, sir, when I was 20 years of age, I pushed a man into the well. My mother covered it up and saying it's an accident. It's some feudal things. I think I'm going for that now, because I didn't kill anybody now, but that boy I threw, I'm going. So actually, if you see, nobody's guilty. Nobody's not guilty. Whatever comes to us is because of what we've done. Whatever good we get is because of some good we have done. Somebody says, why is this, this person is rich, or this person, nobody becomes rich without giving donations. Impossible. You're born into a good family with a golden spoon in the mouth or silver spoon in the mouth, whatever. They must have done some donations in the past. Something they must have done. If they do very well academically, they must have done something in education. Contributed unselfishly. If their health is so good, they must have done something for hospitals. So there is something always connected. Nobody gets anything free like that. If anybody who's rich, they have done effort. Not now, in the past also. Now also they must have done something, but some punya they have done. Punya is there. So anything that goes wrong, we can't blame anybody but our own actions. So good, I want to share an experience of mine, and then I'll leave it for question answers from you. I think I was in my 10th class, 9th or 10th, I don't remember which one. We used to stay back after school hours, and we used to have one ride, a friend of ours who used to drop all of us on the way. So her father used to go someplace and they send the car back. It would be like we would finish school at 3, and maybe 3:30, 3:40 like that, the car would come. So we'd get a ride. That day the ride was not coming, and we had to take some sort of rickshaw or something. And so we thought anyway we'll have half an hour and we'll start late. And then there was a little child there. from our kindergarten. She was crying, sitting there crying, and we inquired and everything. And she has missed her rickshaw. Don't know. She went to the bathroom and she missed the rickshaw. The poor little one was a 5-year-old, you know. And then what we did, we took a rickshaw. We used to call it a calendar. We used to have a calendar. If you flip it, you see the address of the child. And we went all the way from our school to Malakpet. Uh, so nicely, we took the child and we took myself and a friend of mine. We thought we were doing such a good social work and helping this child. His crying. We took, and when we took her, we reached, you know, don't know when we reached at 5:30 or something, you know, probably because by the time we decided everything, we reached quite late. To find that address only took time. And when we dropped her in the house, the way the parents came running and they came and hugged the child, I can't forget it. It's a wonderful scene. They were so happy because they were searching frantically everywhere because the child didn't take the rickshaw. What happened? What happened? And their some relative has also gone to the school. Also, so what not they're doing. By that time, we started also. Then this has happened, and we went home a little later. My parents were in such a bad shape. I can't tell you. Because in those days we don't even have mobile phones, nothing, not to inform. They were like so much. They said, "What is wrong with you? Where did you go?" And said, "We wanted to go and help." And in front of my friend, you know, my parents shouted at me and shouted at my friend also. Why you want to go help the rest of the world? You think about yourself, not so much. All that. That's over. The incident was over, and then I finished my degree and I had to write my entrance. My father encouraged me to write entrances for all MS psychologists wherever it is. Apply everywhere. You do not get the seat, but it increases your experience. So you go write all the entrances for MS psychology. So I went to Vizag for Andhra University to write there. And I was quite careless because when I was leaving, my father said, "Take this phone number. This person is going to come and pick you up. And take this. This is how it is." All that, everything he gave. But I was in a hurry. I was going to write the exam in the morning and take the evening 5 o'clock train and come back. So when I was going to Vizag, I was studying. So this man who was there, he works in the chief engineer's office, and so he was asking me, inquiring about where I'm going and what is that exam I'm writing. He was very nice, and then he said, "Amma, put the light on. No problem. You study. You don't have to put it off. Study. I'm not distracted by it and all." So it was very helpful. And then my exam was at 9. The train was like late, very late. I don't know why. It was supposed to be at 7:15. It was still by 8:20 like that. It was still not reaching, just like that. So it was so risky for me. And that man said, "Don't worry, anybody's coming?" I said, "Yes, my father's cousin is coming to pick me up," and all that. So I said, "Okay." He said, "Okay." So when I got off, I was in such a hurry. I had no time to go look around and recognize my father's cousin, whom I have not met before. And also, and also take a vehicle, go to his house also. I had only 20 minutes. I said, "No, I have to go and I have to take it somehow." That gentleman said, "I'll drop you." So he dropped me in that campus where I have to write my entrance. And he said, "I'll find out about the relatives, and by the time you come out, they will be there." But when I wrote the exam and I went out, nobody was there. This gentleman only is there. Poor man, he didn't even go to his guest house wherever. He came for supervisions or something. And I said, "My God," I said, "Please, if you don't mind, uncle, can you leave me in the railway station?" So till 5, I will sit there. Because I finished my exam by 11 or something. I said, "I will." "No, no, no. How can I leave you like that? You should eat something. You should fresh up and all that." So there is a guest house. There is a lady. He introduced to that she's one of the things works. She works there. I said, "How can I believe this man? I don't even know him." And I didn't even make an effort now to go search for that address. My father gave me the address, which that person has shifted from there. All sorts of confusion is there now. So anyway, I was just ready to go back to Hyderabad. I want to be left in the railway station. But he took me to the guest house. He said, "You go to this room, you get dressed. This lady is there. She'll give you whatever she wants." And every 5 minutes, I'm getting this attack. If my parents come to know this stranger man I'm believing, I've come to some place, Oh my God, I've never done such a thing in my life. I'll get into trouble. I'll get into trouble. I was going on telling myself, but I said, I'll go back in the evening and that's about it. So he said, I'm going to different places for supervision. You can follow me. So he took me to a restaurant. We ate also. And he had about 2 people who were accompanying, and he introduced. I don't know, I would not recommend anyone to do this, but at that moment of time, I don't know what happened to me. And then he took me to the temple there in Vizag. One temple is the Shiva temple. He took me there, and then there he told about his what scripture, what he read, and everything. So he was a good man. He must have been. He's a good retire in a year. Hmm. So you never heard this, Ravina? Really? I must have shared so many times. Uh, so then after that, I was that sudden palpitations I will get. Oh my God, what am I doing? Who's this man? What are these people? What am I going around with like that? Again, I'm getting this feeling. And I kept telling, Uncle, you can leave me at the railway station. And he said, no, you will go. It's about in everywhere we are going supervision, and he's on every office, he's introducing me as his niece. Some relationship you have to tell. So he's telling it's my niece, and she's accompanying me, and like that he will tell. And then finally, one man, he said, you also take the ticket and you take her to Hyderabad, because this girl, she should reach home safely. So this is another stranger. He took a ticket with me and he got me into the train. And I was sitting I have my own reserved seat. And he'll keep coming. He has somewhere. He'll keep coming. Amma, like, will you drink water? Huh? Coconut water, Amma. Will you drink coconut water? Will you eat this? Will you eat that? I'll get fruit. All through the journey, he was taking it so well. I can't tell, so much love. I don't understand why that man was so great and this man is so great. And then when I reached my mother's brother had come to receive me in the railway station. He left me and he met my uncle thought that I met him on the train or something. I went home also. My parents have really not understood the fact that I have not gone to any of the relatives' house. And I have gone to, somebody's, and I didn't have to stay the night. No, I came back. But the time it was afternoon or something, it registered in my father's head that I did not go to his cousin Ram's house. I did not go. Practically, I wrote the exam and with this man. My father slipped a heartbeat. How do you believe like that? What kind of a girl you are? And then he called my mother. She was in the hospital at that time. She's working there. No, you come immediately. We have to have this talk with her. My mother came. And she said, and then she hugged me and cried and cried. Amma, something would have happened. Something would have happened. How they so sweet box and one polarity sweet box and one flower bouquet. They went to meet him, to thank him, to chief engineer's office here. They went there and thanked him, and how much they said, thank you so much, you took care of our child and everything. I look back and I told my mother, why this happened? One stranger man taking care of me whole day, feeding me and everything. You know why? Because I took the child and dropped her in her house when I was 15. That return I got now. No karma goes free. Everything is returned. Yeah, Pravina, you're very amused. So karma is accurate, very, very accurate. So you're not born in a family, you're not married to somebody, or you don't come into connection with somebody, don't make somebody a business partner without having an account with them. 100% you have account, or else you're not born. Somebody was telling, sister, newspaper, I saw this person is earning so much and he's some taxpayer, good taxpayer or something. So I said, and he's telling, sister, she's saying, sister, if only this alliance I got, this man's alliance I got, and if only, I didn't marry my husband and I married him, I would be one of the richest people in Hyderabad. I said, but you didn't have an account with him, no? You had an account with this husband. That's why you rejected him. Whom you have, if you had married him, you would have had an account with him. Even if he's rich or whatever, you'll take sorrow from him. So accounts are accounts. It's not going to change. Only when we don't react, then we can finish that account. count. If you keep reacting and getting emotional, and then it'll keep increasing. Don't react. That's the whole thing. Om Shanti.